To what extent do you think America and Israel have different motivations when it comes to the war against Iran?
I think that really is the crucial question. We have the US president and the Israeli prime minister, who are both publicly claiming that their military actions in Iran are not being dictated by the other. Trump doesn't want the perspective that he's being pushed around by a smaller country, and Netanyahu doesn't want the perspective that he's being pushed around by a larger country. But I think the reality is, much closer to your question, really, and that is that the motivation for this war is ultimately due to kind of common instincts from Netanyahu and Trump, and that is that they see action against Iran as fulfilling their individual political objectives. And of course, for both of them, that is ultimately for political survival. For Netanyahu, he wants to destroy the Iranian regime so that he can tell the Israeli electorate at the next election that he's defeated all of Israel's enemies, including Hamas's and Hezbollah's leadership, and so that ultimately he can compensate for presiding over the October 7th massacre. And of course, for Trump, he's frustrated by his kind of domestic political failures, the slowing down of the US economy. I think ultimately he's discovered through his Venezuela operation that actually the US military is something that he can use that can be quite effective. I think he's assumed in this instance that actually it could be used in Iran for a very quick and easy win like he had in Venezuela. But I think what we're seeing is the kind of consequences of those slight variations between them is actually resulting and manifesting in different military objectives. For Israel, they are far more concerned with toppling the Iranian regime than America. And I think that is why you're seeing Israel go after Iran's oil infrastructure, because I think ultimately it's seen that the attacks and the decapitation of Iran's regime hasn't sparked the kind of uprising that it hoped. And so what it's trying to do is trying to damage the regime long term to stop it from producing revenues that hopefully that will destabilize the regime, perhaps even after the war ends, to produce some kind of result that ends the regime. And of course, this seems to have caused a major friction and be a bit of a wedge issue between the United States and Israel. Of course, we saw Israel attack a major oil field just a few days ago, and that prompted a Iranian attack on a Qatari oil field. And of course, the Qataris got hugely angry about that and clearly had communicated that to Donald Trump, who then, of course, publicly stated via Truth Social that Israel will not be doing this anymore. So
okay, well, let me just jump in there, if I may, for a moment. Forgive me. I mean, you mentioned the US economy there, and Donald Trump has made it clear he's not keen on a prolonged conflict, but Benjamin Netanyahu may be on a different timeline.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, it's just completely different perspectives in terms of what they want to see as an end game for this war. Trump does not want to be drawn into a very difficult war with high economic and political and military costs for America, particularly so soon to the US midterm elections. I think ultimately Netanyahu sees this as he wants it to be the final war against Iran. I think for him, it would be a bit of a difficult thing to sell to the Israeli electorate if he only managed to replace the Iranian leadership with other people in leadership who are even more hardline. So I think for Netanyahu, he wants to really see this through to the end. But at the moment, it's completely unclear whether those two sides, the Israel and the United States, will actually be able to reconcile those two differences.
And what about when it comes to strikes on energy facilities, which you touched on there? Is America and Israel, are they together on the approach?
Well, I think certainly not in terms of their kind of current strategy, or certainly what we've seen over the last 2 weeks. We have seen Israel go for oil fields, oil refineries, as well as gas fields. And we haven't seen America do that yet. Trump has only threatened to do it if he doesn't get his way with Iran. I think the difficulty that Trump is going to have is that he has repeatedly threatened force against Iran to try to coerce them into actions. I mean, that's how this whole war began initially. But ultimately, the Iranians are willing to pay an unbelievably high price, both in terms of personal cost, but also in terms of damage to their country's economy. And so it's possible that actually Iran will kind of call his bluff, and Trump will be in a very difficult situation where he's actually promised some kind of specific retribution against Iran's energy infrastructure. But at the same time, he knows that if he escalates the war in that way, that actually that will ultimately lead to spiraling energy costs around the world, which of course is not going to be good for US consumers and US voters. So I think Trump is really in a bit of a catch-22 situation.